live.
Beautiful. Coming up, Netflix's earnings. A lot of news and swirl around some of the things that they're doing before 2023.
That's right.
We're going to review it right now.
Stay tuned. All right, we're back.
Episode 24, baby.
24.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Entertainment Business Review. I am Brian.
I am Jordan.
And we're the two smartest dumbasses talking about the entertainment business, where we try to make some of the entertainment business news a little bit more digestible and easier to understand.
That's right.
So, all the news these days is around the same ass company,
It always is.
right? They're just like they're the one company that everyone seems to listen to. So, but I mean, it is interesting, right?
Well, it's funny. I mean, they are listening to it at the same time. I feel like people are starting to see the cracks in Netflix's armor, and we'll talk more about
the
this.
Scrutiny is important, and we're talking about Netflix, by the way, in case that wasn't obvious.
Clear. Unfortunately, yeah.
So I mean, there's a couple things. So we'll kind of dive into each one. I think the main thing today was their earnings just came out, and they crushed expectations. And
Yes.
the messaging is really, really interesting here, right? Because I mean, every article that I've seen so far said that they like crushed expectations.
Yes.
But when you actually dig into the numbers a little bit, there's just, I'm not saying that they didn't do well, but there's just like questions that I have about so many of the numbers.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, what annoys me generally about the usual perception around like how Wall Street analyzes Netflix is like their earnings is when Netflix beats the forecast that Netflix gave itself.
Right.
Which is like, it's so dumb. They're like, oh my God, they made 2.5 million subscribers compared to, their estimate of 1 million.
Yeah.
Forgetting that both those numbers are dog shit. They're really not good. Netflix still on a year-over-year basis is net loss of UCAN subscribers. Like,
Which is their
people
most
forget about
valuable
it. Right.
segment. I mean, that's my biggest problem with this is like the number that they released today was we had net ads in Q3 of 2.4 million, but we forecasted like 1.1 million. So we under forecasted.
Yes.
And then the market's going to go this, and then like, it's
ridiculous.
It's ridiculous. Like,
it's so dumb.
And the thing is, like, when they made their forecast, they had like their method of forecasting, right? And they should have known what the indicators were going to be 3 months from now. So it's like, to some extent, it's like, did they actually know that they're going to beat forecast, but they kind of just like were holding it back so that they could allow their stock to rally?
Yeah, why would they
came.
overpromise and underdeliver? That's so dumb. Of course, they probably make an estimate and they discount like 20%.
But the thing that I'm like, it's like almost like pseudo market manipulation a little bit, because it's
100%.
like missing, like, it doesn't matter if you go below or above.
Yeah.
But not hitting your forecast just means you're shit at forecasting.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, it is.
I mean, that or you're lying on the actual numbers. So like,
right.
Like, and that's a huge amount, right? Their discrepancy is over 100%. Yeah.
So, I will say, like, to like what Netflix would probably, like, what the executives there would probably say is they're like, well, the market reacted to that forecast, which was terrible, right? So like, we kind of already took that hit in the last quarter because we gave a forecast that was really shitty.
Yeah, that's fair.
So like we had that hit. Like we did give them a terrible forecast, and that does affect our stock price too. It's a timing thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess that's fair. But my annoyance almost isn't even with Netflix. It's mainly with how Wall Street reacts to Netflix earnings, because they just don't. They're still on the Netflix train of like, this is the future of entertainment, when all the signs are pointing to Netflix's. I mean, they're trying, like, they're doing gaming. They're trying to get into ad sales because their hardcore business, the streaming only business, which they thought was going to be way bigger than what it's probably going to be, is not working. So they're trying other things, and Wall Street's like, yeah, I mean, that's concerning, but it's fine. But it's fine. And it's like, no. Like, one of the things they talk about is like, oh, well, Netflix had like they're generating about $1 billion in cash. It's like, I mean, Disney makes way more in cash.
Right.
Apple and Amazon,
Valuation's
that's
not
like a
it.
different universe of how much cash they generate.
Yeah.
Are we pretending like Netflix has a chance to become like an entertainment titan compared to like, I mean, Apple could just start actually really going into the game and could destroy Netflix in like 5 seconds. So I don't like.
Yeah.
People got to get off the Netflix train. At least not. You don't have to get off the Netflix train, but you have to at least like stop just being like Netflix is a god in this industry, which when they're not.
Yeah.
Like it's particularly when their content is really not, their business is not as in good territory as these other companies, and their content is definitely not better than other platforms like HBO Max.
Yeah, and I'll say like they were saying that overall their ARM, which is their average revenue per membership, had increased 1%, which is, I mean, any increase is good, but that's not a huge amount. And then they did like from a revenue perspective, their Q3 revenue had went down from Q2. But it is up year over year.
Yeah, I guess you want to compare year over year a little bit.
Yeah, you do.
Than month to month.
And then they're saying that the reason is the sequential decline in revenue was entirely due to FX. So those are that's kind of crazy. But I guess since they are operating in so many different countries, that becomes a consideration.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they can use that as an excuse, but it's also like, I mean, yeah, when your business relies on you having to be international to be successful, which is seriously what the case is.
Well, so here's the thing.
Sorry, you're gonna have to deal with FX issues.
Yeah,
like maybe you should develop a business that works just in the United States too.
Yeah, I mean, from a memberships perspective, they've tapped out in the U.S., so they're not going to see that much growth. The only way that they are is by squeezing.
Well, I was going to say, it's still funny because you say that they're tapped out, and the numbers show that they're obviously tapped out, but they keep whipping out this BS where they're like, well, TV time on, time spent on TV for streaming is only like this percent or whatever. Right. And they're like, don't worry, once people stop using cable, they'll start using Netflix more. I'm like, do you really think people are going to use Netflix more because they're too busy on cable? Like, I mean, maybe people in the flyover states are still like obsessed with cable, but like, I don't see them, if they're still using cable today, I don't see why they would switch to Netflix now. They would have made that switch a long time ago.
Yeah, and it's not like the transition from cable to streaming is the most prominent in the U.S. anymore. That's kind of like, that ship has kind of sailed a little bit, right? Like the remaining cable users are those like staunch 50 plus, like boomers that are just going to hold on to it.
Right. Or they're going to transition, if they are going to transition, like if they're going to get out, they're going to do like a Roku channel, or they're going to do one of the free AVOD services because they like the structure of cable probably. Or they like sports, which Netflix can't do, or doesn't do. So like it's not a substitute for what those cable, like I think they think that the TAM in the United States is going to grow because there are people that are cable. They're going to start watching Netflix now. It's like, dude, anybody who wants to watch cable, Netflix, or stream in the United States is already doing it. You're not adding more magical new people to the streaming universe. Like, come on. It's been like 15 years of streaming. Like, we figured it out. Well, not 15 years, but it's been like 10 at least. Yeah. Like, we're done. Like, everybody knows about streaming and knows how to get access to it at this point. Like, I don't see the market growing. And it scares the viability of the streaming business at large because it means you have to go international in order to make it kind of valuable. But like compared to like
for most streaming companies, right? There's for the streaming companies, or like at least like the digital like media arms, like the way that you can grow now is either go international, and in lieu of any international growth, you have to find other methods of more revenue. So that just means hybridizing your model, which is what they're doing in the U.S.
Right.
I mean, speaking of which, they are going to be releasing their AVOD tier in November, which is hats off to them, bringing a whole, like a fully baked AVOD product to market in that short of a time period is impressive.
Well, so I was gonna ask you this because one of our friends, the friend I was sitting with last night, she was saying that that Netflix has probably been planning this for years. And I was like, I don't think so. I honestly don't think they thought about this until like a year and a half where the subscribers started slowing down and they were like, crap. And they just were on it. like really fast. Because I can imagine during COVID, Netflix was like hitting these massive subscriber peaks, and they were like, we should think about going to AVOD. I don't think that's true.
So
I mean, it's possible, I guess.
I bet you they've. So the way these, at least I can speak on behalf of like some tech streaming companies, but the way that they do it is every single year, I bet you, someone's going to come along and say like, should we do AVOD?
Yeah.
And they'll refresh the same analysis every year, and at some point it made sense to do it.
Right.
So they probably have been thinking about it. Whether or not they pulled the trigger to build something,
Right, they're starting to execute.
is completely different, right? And like, and I remember reading that Reed Hastings was saying, "No, we're still going to stay subscription only." Like, like not even 8 months ago, right? So like,
dude, he wrote that book basically
like a year and a half ago.
His own, like smelling his own farts, like being like, look at how beautiful the Netflix management style is. We overpay.
Yeah,
and now they're cutting everybody.
Yeah, now they're cutting everybody and hiring straight out of undergrad.
Yeah, exactly.
But I mean, like,
so I don't know. I think Netflix was very cocky with themselves for a while, but you're right. I'm sure they were at least in the back of their heads like, we might have to do AVOD eventually. We should think about it. But we're probably not. Honestly, Reed's probably not as like hand-holding as much in the company anymore. And I bet he was like very like, no, we're only subscription. And now he's like, kind of moving, he's co-CEO with Ted. He's like kind of moving off. Now I think everyone around him is like, all right, let's start like, stop being stubborn.
Well, here's the thing, like eventually you're going to have to become like more corporate, and that's just like the route that they're taking.
Yep.
So, I mean, the question here is the cannibalization that's going to inevitably occur because people are going to either downgrade or churn completely, or if people were going to subscribe to the premium tier, but now they're going to subscribe to ad tier, that's cannibalization. Is the advertising revenue that they're going to get from this able to make up for the cannibalization?
So that's right. That's kind of the question is, like, how are they going to, they don't have a product yet, so they don't know how many AVOD subscribers they're going to have. So I don't know how they set their rates. Well, right, because they don't have impression data yet.
Yeah. Like, I mean, they just went to market saying that they're going to have it. We have, like, demographics, psychographics of, like, all these populations of, like, young Gen Z folks that you can advertise to. So obviously, like, there's some value proposition that they're pitching as they're getting their upfronts.
Right. But they can't use their SVOD subscribers, right? Like, because they're not, the SVOD subscribers aren't going to be the ones to watch. So they can't be like, we have 220 million subscribers we can push your ads to, because that's not true. Like, they won't be getting ads.
Yeah, that is true.
So it would only be the AVOD subscribers that you'd be able to, like, use as a reference point to set those rates.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know how they start with that.
I mean, I think they mentioned specifically that, like, there's a lot of interest, right?
I'm sure there is.
Whether or not it's, like, going to execute well, that's a whole different question.
Yeah. Do you think that it adds subscribers net?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think so either. I don't think so either. I think there are going to be subscribers who are just going to switch to the ads. I don't think there's anybody who was like debating whether to get Netflix and they're like, oh, well, now that they have the ad tier, now I'm going to be a subscriber. Yeah. Well, like, I don't, or like I was going to churn, but now I'm not because I can just do the ad tier. I'm like, I don't think that's. I think there are people who are like, I don't use Netflix that much, but I kind of want to keep it. Like, I've already been paying it. I'm just going to move to the AVOD.
There's two really important considerations here. One, is the content good enough that someone's going to sit through ads to watch?
That's also a good point.
That's a big question, right?
Yeah, that's
for someone like you and I, probably not.
Not with Netflix's output for the last 5 years.
Yeah. And the second thing is, from a consumer behavior perspective, you're gonna downgrade, right?
Yeah.
Then you'll be like, if you're not watching anything but you're still subscribed to the premium tier, you're like, you know what? Maybe I'll go to the lower tier. I'll watch ads. You go down to that lower tier, and then you might realize also that you're not watching anymore, and you're watching ads now. Now, fuck it, you're gonna churn completely.
That's an interesting point. It might actually motivate people to churn more.
That's what I think might unexpectedly happen.
Yeah.
Because that is a consumer thing, and it's not like we're out of like a recessionary period already. Like people are still cutting their services right now.
Now the alternative, right? And I think I saw an article about this that Netflix was experimenting with some kind of feature where. Something about transferring your profile, where they're starting to think about cracking down on passwords. And they're like trying to do it in a way that like doesn't fuck them.
Yeah.
No, I don't see any way that it doesn't. Like I don't see how they could do anything.
Yeah.
Do you know what article I'm talking
about?
Yeah,
I don't know which article you're talking
about. Did you read it?
So it basically said that they had been experimenting with 3 South American companies. I think it was like Chile, somewhere else, Peru, somewhere else, where they're giving people the option to port out their accounts if if they want to get their own account. Like, we're going to crack down on password sharing.
Oh, so
You
your
get your own
algorithm
account.
stays the same.
Your algorithm stays the same, and
Right,
you
the
can
one
just
that
port
nobody gives
out.
a crap about. But
And
yes.
then what they basically said in the article was they love that feature, and then they went off and ported their profile outside. So what they're telling me is that people loved the fact that they could get their information, but that they would now pay 3 times as much for
Right.
their own subscription. Like, people
you're
love
fucking-
that
yeah.
feature. Like, they just went out of their way to pay more.
Right.
Like,
Thank you so much. I know you're forcing me to pay more money, but thank goodness you
Yeah.
brought over the algorithm
Yeah,
that
thank
no
God.
one complains about. Nobody complains that the algorithm at Netflix doesn't work, except
Yeah.
for like literally everybody. Like, that's the funny part is like there's so much value. It's like, do you think you're TikTok? You're not TikTok. You're
the
not
weird
YouTube.
thing
Like
is-
nobody cares about the Netflix algorithm.
The weird thing is that, like, the street seems to believe that this means that people are more likely going to, like, instead of just churning completely, they're just going to get their own accounts.
That's
The
what they
value,
think.
that's what they think. But the
Right.
value proposition that Netflix provided way back when they acquired all these subs is like, you could share it, right?
Right.
Like, your actual
That was the value
cost,
prop.
Yeah,
Yeah.
your actual cost per subscription was low because
Cable. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it was nuts.
it was low because, like, it was what, $19 a month, and you had 5 people on there, so it's
Right.
like $2.50, $3.
Yep.
Like, are you all of a sudden gonna be okay? Like, they're gonna roll it out in 2023.
Mm-hmm.
Are you all of a sudden okay paying 5 times as much potentially?
Yep.
For this? Like, I already made the calculation in my mind
Yeah.
that it's way not worth it, right? Like, I
No.
can't be the only one that thinks that 5 times. Like, you're
Yeah.
basically saying that the willingness to pay is underestimated by 5 times.
Yep.
That's
Also, I blame Netflix entirely for this because Netflix set the market for this price.
Right.
Because Netflix is the one who started streaming. They could have started like at a $40 subscription, and probably a lot of people would pay for it because they're like, well, it's like kind of a replacement for cable in a lot of ways, and I pay $120 for cable.
Yeah.
It's like $40 to share it with my family. That seems pretty reasonable. They set it to like $8.
Yeah.
They set the market price, so now everyone's like, yeah, I'm
Right.
not paying more than that's what you valued it as.
Yeah.
And
Well-
it's
well, here's the-
ridiculous. It's
like,
not economic.
the value perception is different now too.
Yeah.
right? Like, for example, for HBO Max, I would pay like $15, $16 a month for it.
Oh,
because
yeah.
I mean, I think the quality of the content reflects the price.
Yep.
And I would be willing to pay it on my own.
Yep.
Now for Netflix, I'm not certain about that.
Well, I think Netflix, the people at Netflix aren't stupid. Like, they have to know they have a content problem. Like, I mean, maybe they don't, but like, there's just both Apple and HBO have come in and they've shown that you can make that you can make good content, and Netflix just doesn't do it. Or their platform is designed in a way where it's hard to find the good stuff.
Yeah.
really, because
I've
you
been
know.
thinking about that a lot more and more these days, and I wonder if it's because our taste in content has changed as we grew, and that
maybe.
perhaps they're catering to a subscriber base that is younger, and so the content that they are interested in is much different to the content that we're interested in, and perhaps we're just not understanding that huge segment that they now have.
Maybe
I
Yeah,
suspect
don't know.
that might be the case. I hope that's the case. But
Maybe. Yeah.
I don't
I mean,
know.
do you think young people they watch more Netflix than they do the other streaming platforms?
Dude, young people love like true crime shit like Dahmer. And I mean,
Right. I mean, that blew up. Yeah.
yeah, and there's a ton
like,
of these
Squid
other
Game.
shows like like Bridgerton, like that's a younger skewing show as well, like YA stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think they do reasonably well, but the thing is, for that audience, you don't have to make really sophisticated or very high quality storytelling, right?
No,
They just
no.
need to be entertained.
Right.
You need to just capture their attention for more than what TikTok would catch.
Yeah.
And that's kind of
Yeah.
their benchmark. So.
Yeah. I think, honestly, in my opinion, I think Netflix's problem is they don't have a brand that's not streaming. Like, you know how every company has a brand when it comes to their content in terms of what you expect when their content comes on.
Right.
Except for, like, I mean, Amazon doesn't really. But, like, when a Disney thing comes on, you kind of have an idea of, like, the feelings that you're going to have from watching a Disney movie or a Disney TV show. Same thing with, like, HBO Max. When you see the HBO Max thing, you're like, this is just going to be a fire show. I don't know, like, it's going to be drama, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, you have a feeling when those things come on. But when you see the Netflix, you're like, I don't know what this is going to be. This could be like 500 different things.
Yeah.
So they have no brands on content. Like, you need kind of I think you need a brand surrounded by the type of content that you have, whether it's a lot or like whatever that brand is.
I think
you kind of need something.
I think they've been developing a brand, whether it's a positive brand. I think that's
a
different
up for
question.
debate. Yeah.
Right?
Well, they leaned on like Netflix, like it was streaming, but now they have no competitive advantage because everybody's just streaming now.
Yeah.
So
I think the brand that they were trying to do was like maybe make some franchises, but also like let's do high star stuff.
Right.
Star fuckery movies, right?
Yeah.
But those are expensive and they don't necessarily last.
Well, also what they're realizing is that like you can't throw a magic wand and just be able to magically create good content. Like it used to be, back in the day, you'd find like a pretty decent writer and you'd put a movie star in there and it was always going to be successful almost frequently. But now in this saturated environment, there's not really a movie star that really attracts people like alone. I mean, maybe like,
very few.
Very few. Yeah. I mean, like Chris Pratt has shown to do it even with terrible stuff, and like
Same with Tom Holland.
Yeah, Tom Holland. Like there are a couple of actors and actresses that can, like Zendaya probably can to a certain extent. Like there are some actors and actresses that can, but they're very few, very very few that can actually pull. And honestly, I don't even know if they can do it like to the extent that they used to like 20, 30 years ago. Yeah. Even Leo was in that Netflix movie that was kind of the Don't Look Up one last year with Jennifer Lawrence. And I think everybody watched it because those two were in it and there was Adam McKay. And then we saw it and we're like, nope, even they can't verifiably confirm a good movie. So now I don't think anybody trusts anything to be necessarily good unless their friends recommend it.
I was going to say, like, maybe it's because they're still so relatively young that they haven't been able to develop a brand. But then now that I think about it, like, Hulu has a really distinct high premium brand too, right?
Yep.
And they've been around for less time.
Yeah. Hulu's developed a pretty good brand about having actually good, and that's the thing. They have good content. Like they're starting to really figure out good content now.
Yeah.
And now when I go onto Hulu, I actually have like pretty good confidence that they're gonna have good stuff.
Yep. Same.
Netflix is still not that way.
Yeah.
I don't know what they need to do, but
it's weird.
They still have this perception of having nothing.
Stopped watching it as much. The algorithm just like left us for dead.
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah,
I mean, like this guy's just inactive. Let's not give him shit.
Yeah, let's not even bother catering this person.
Yeah, let's just give him black and white videos from the 80s.
Right.
Or something.
Yeah. No, it's funny because I was talking to my dad. He sent me this article like the other day, and he was like, "I feel like you wrote this because I complain about Netflix to him all the time." But like, but he was like, yeah, there's like nothing on Netflix anymore. I'm like, that's the funny thing. There is a lot on Netflix, but it's nothing you want to watch.
Yeah.
Or you don't care enough to figure out if it's something that you want to watch.
Yeah.
And that's Netflix's fault because they're throwing so much crap at you. Eventually you're like, no, I know HBO Max has like 3 shows for me to choose and they're all probably going to be good. Yeah. I don't need all this. Like, there's a very small chance that what Netflix gives me is I'm going to like versus there's almost like 100% chance whatever HBO Max gives me.
I mean, as adults, too, like, there's not so much time that we can spend on, like, shitty-ass shows, right?
No, like I don't have much time to watch TV.
When I'm choosing shows, I want to make sure this is, like, my time invested in this show is going to be worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
That doesn't always happen.
And that's the funny thing is and that's why, like, I hate, and I think we're going to revert back to this, is we're going to get too much content is not... Like, I think everyone's like, oh, we have choice. Consumers have so much more choice, and it's so much better for the consumer. It's not. It's overwhelming for the consumer. You want to give them like 3. Like, you want the whole point of the company, the entertainment companies, to be like, we got thousands of scripts, and we read the scripts for you, and we developed it for you, and now we got you 3 choices, and they're all great.
Yeah.
And you're paying us to give you 3 good stuff.
Yeah.
Versus now Netflix is like, we don't even filter for you. We give you just everything and you figure it out because of choice. And it's like, no, the consumer's like, fuck off. Like, are you kidding me?
I think the main takeaway from all of this is that like their fundamental problems are still not addressed.
No, it's not.
They have new things that they're doing that are all risks.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily proven that they're going to be successful. So that's not, in my opinion, like very optimistic view. So
what do you think about they double down on the binge and they're like, we're never not doing binge?
Didn't they do like half a season drop or something?
They for some shows they randomly did do like weird, like Arcane did like a 3-episode drop every week.
They started experimenting with like
they have experimented, but they said in the call apparently that they're still doing on very vast majority of basis that they should binge. Actually, I think there's even a comment in the letter I thought I saw where they're like, imagine if like we think like Dahmer did really well because of the ability to binge. I'm like, I don't know if that's true. I'm gonna be honest. They're like, imagine if Dahmer wasn't released weekly. Like it's well, okay.
Yeah.
For example, how a Korean title like it's hard to imagine how a Korean title like Squid Game would have become a mega hit globally without the momentum that came from people being able to binge it. It's like, how can you say that? You have no idea what would have happened if you had released Squid Game weekly, if it would have been bigger than it would have been on the binge model. Also, maybe that's true, but like that's a specific type of show.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I mean,
maybe Squid Game is just more of a binge type show, but other shows aren't.
Well, so here's what I think the math, what they're trying to allude to, right? Like, if you have, like, let's say engagement on the y-axis and over time, they're expecting that the massive spike at the beginning and, like, a huge taper off, that area under that chart is bigger than, like, several medium level spikes over time.
Yeah.
I don't think that's true because you're talking
either.
about degrees much larger.
Yeah.
And I mean, I guess if they do one large spike after another large spike, like and like do this all the time, that's kind of what they're going for, right? They're trying to make the area under that graph larger by pushing out as much content as possible.
Yeah.
I mean, that just seems wasteful.
I agree. And I think one thing that they don't think about because there's no data behind it, and I don't think a lot of Netflix executives can have thoughts without data.
Right.
I don't think they think about like the benefit of people, like if it's a weekly release, people watching it at the same time and talking about it the next day, and being immersed in the content or thinking about the content for like 3 months and like thinking about like talking about it with their friends, thinking about it for 3 months. It creates a stronger affinity for the title. So when the second season comes out, I think people are more likely to remember it because it was a longer part of their lives in terms of how like they thought about the show versus like, I binged Squid Game in like 2 weeks and it exited my life and I'm done.
Yeah.
And I don't like, there might be a Squid Game too. I'm not gonna really care. But like if I had 3 months maybe of like, I would go to friends' houses to watch Squid Game, or we were talking about it every week at work, I would be much more inclined to want to watch the second season because I like it more because it's now a communal thing versus it's not a communal thing when you binge it. It's, you just kind of do it yourself.
There's something about like human behavior and interest like gestating over time.
Yeah.
That is like hard to model or like remanufacture.
Right.
But yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, it's Game of Thrones. Like, I mean, you've been following it, right? Like, do you talk to coworkers? Like, all
the time.
Yeah, at work, I'll be like, "Did you guys see the last episode?" And we'll talk about it. Like, that's what TV's meant to do, and that's what makes TV shows valuable.
I mean,
when you make it a communal thing.
Like, if you just think about the content of those discussions, right? Like, we discuss because we're saying, "Did you watch what just happened? Like, what do you think is gonna happen?"
Yes, exactly.
You don't say like, "Oh, that story was great." End of conversation.
Right.
Right. Like,
well, that's the difference between like Squid Game. Is Squid Game, the conversations were like, "Have you watched Squid Game?" And they're like, "No." And they're like, "Okay, well, I binged it. It's really good. Watch it." Okay, moving on. And they talk about something else.
Right.
Versus like Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
That's exactly.
It's
you
the
have those
unknown
convos
that creates the engagement.
Right.
Not what is
the
known.
The theories and the podcasts that eventually come up and like all that stuff. You're missing out on it. Nobody watched Squid Game with other people. Nobody was like, let's have a Squid Game marathon. Like, no. Nobody was doing that. Also, I mean, fuck Stranger Things. Stranger Things didn't do that because who wants to let's go watch a Stranger Things like watch party and then go to binge it and they're like, oh, it's fucking 20 hours.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, no. I don't want to watch.
Can't.
I don't want to binge
Physically
20 hours of fucking content.
Yeah.
Also, 2-hour episodes. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. Like, just make a movie at that point.
Well, you know what they did do? They got the two of us talking about it for 35 minutes straight. So
well, we're the
that.
only one, but because we're in the industry, we care about it. Versus most people don't give a shit about this.
Right.
And they just end up not watching Netflix or giving a shit about Netflix. Yeah. And then Netflix is like, why do people care? Why do people think that Netflix content is bad? Mm-hmm. It's like, well,
I'll end my comments by like saying that I think some of these premium services that like are dying off, but they have like only a few high profile series releases like every month, only a few.
Yeah.
So like your Epics, Stars, they do really good stuff.
Yeah.
They do really good stuff, but they're dying off because they don't have that same level of scale. So there is something
Yeah.
to be said for the value of scale that Netflix has.
Yeah.
But I guess this could be my transition into my recommendation. So
Yeah,
I started
fair enough.
watching War of the Worlds on Epix.
Ooh.
It's
okay.
great. It's awesome. Like
Son of
it's a
bitch, you get all
Canal
the streaming
Plus
platforms free.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna buy Epics.
I mean,
that's funny.
it's so good. Like
Is it? Yeah.
I'm like blown away by how good it is. It's kind of like a remake of the original
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
the original movie and the original book.
And the original, the
Um,
original radio.
But it's
Yeah.
done by like Canal Plus, which is a French show, and like half of it is in French and
Yeah.
subtitled, but half is British. But it's done so well. I almost binged the first season over
Yeah.
the weekend.
Really?
I haven't done that for a series in a long time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's.
So-
I wonder how many shows like that that are really good, but are on those like kind of smaller platforms.
That's what I'm saying.
Like, are just
there's
missed.
probably a ton of gems just because they're on the smaller platform.
Yeah, people just don't hear about them.
Yeah.
because it's too much.
Yeah.
That's a little sad. How'd you find out about it? Did somebody recommend it to you?
I honestly just saw a billboard.
Really?
Yeah, and I've been
The
seeing
billboard
the billboards.
worked?
Yeah, and I was like, you know
That's
what?
funny.
I like the movie with Tom Cruise, so I'm gonna watch the show.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough. That's
I highly
always
recommend.
War of the Worlds always has a special place in my heart because I feel like it was a huge when what's his name? The guy who wrote Citizen Kane. Why am I forgetting his name?
Who wrote Citizen Kane?
The star of Citizen Kane. What the hell?
Star. Oh, oh no, I was gonna say something else.
Orson Welles.
Orson Welles, yeah.
He got famous. I mean, our RKO like actually got him to like they were like you can make a movie with us for Citizen Kane because have you heard this story? He was a radio personality and he read the War of the Worlds on the radio, and that was when radio was massive. Like everybody in America, like 50 million people, like were listening to radio all the time.
Yeah.
And he read the book, but he said it in a way that made it like it was like a news report.
Oh.
So people were legitimately like driving off the road, being like, "Oh my God, we're getting invaded by a fucking alien
Wow.
species." And so the studio was like, "Yo, that was amazing. That
Yeah.
was brilliant. Like,
do
come
it."
make movies with us." So War of the Worlds always has like my heart because like I could just that's such a crazy when like media was not so saturated as it is
Yeah.
today, and like everybody was like.
So
watching
engaged.
only like one or
Yeah.
two. There was like just radio and like 3 channels on television. So American culture was like very like
Collective.
tight.
Yeah.
So like the fact that he could pull off something like that
Yeah.
and people freaked out is just hilarious to me.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But
But also kind of
yeah.
a shame that this doesn't have as much reach as it potentially could.
No.
Maybe it does in
Yeah.
France. Maybe it does in France. Like
It
who
might.
knows?
It
Yeah.
might. Yeah,
But-
that's a good rec though.
Yeah,
How
for
much
sure.
is Epic? How much is Epic? Like a week? A month?
I want to say it's like in the $9 to $10 range.
Okay. Is it does it brand itself as like a premium like Showtime
Yeah.
and
It's
Stars?
it's like a premium add-on.
Who owns Epic?
MGM.
Epic's- Really?
MGM and I guess now Amazon.
And then
Once the-
Amazon.
yeah,
That's
once the acquisition.
interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
So it's not going to be there for much longer. Like
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I had to put my money on it, because it's just going to get absorbed. Like the library that it has is mostly MGM. right?
Yeah.
So it's just
That's
going to get
cool.
absorbed at some point.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, you can get an annual plan for pretty cheap on your Roku device.
Really?
Yeah.
All right. Fair enough. My remote's starting to work actually.
Oh, okay.
I
yeah,
think-
I put in a good word for you. So.
Yeah, you did something. Although I have to use my remote now because my phone app doesn't work.
Oh.
So my phone app just stopped working. I can't connect to the TV for some reason. I'm
Okay,
like,
that's a bigger problem because people use the app a lot.
yeah, I don't know why it's not. I don't know why it just stopped working one day. But
Okay.
now I think actually it might not be a remote problem. It might be a battery problem. I'm realizing maybe the Amazon batteries that I have are just shit.
Maybe.
Because every time I replace the batteries, the remote starts working, and then like after like 3 days it dies, and then
Okay.
I can't.
That's an
So it might not be the
Amazon
remote.
problem,
It
not
might
a
be an
Roku
Amazon.
problem.
Yeah, I might have been blaming Roku for something that was actually an Amazon problem for like
Yes.
a year. Yeah, honestly.
Nice. All right. So before I incriminate myself, we should probably wrap it up.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I started to watch, which is really interesting, is the Cyberpunk anime on Netflix.
Oh, so you do watch something.
I do watch new things. Well, okay. Well, I will say, and this is gonna be controversial, and you might get mad at me. I got through 7 episodes of Severance, and I couldn't do it. I
Really?
was so bored, dude. I was so bored. I was like, nothing's happening. Like, oh my
Really?
gosh, those two like he almost kissed Christopher Walken. Like, oh my God. I was like, I don't even care about this person. Like, it's so slow. Like, I feel like nothing's happening for like
It is-
7. I'm sure it's gonna pick up. Like when she
It is a
she
slow
almost
burn.
killed herself. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, it's gonna start picking up, and then nope, she just recovers. They like make her do that thing, and then she's back
Yeah.
in the office. I'm like, oh my God, we're here again.
It's-
like nothing's happening.
It's a slow burn for sure.
It's a slow burn, and I've been trying to get through it, but after episode 7, I'm like, I just don't care. I just don't care anymore. Like, I can't pay attention.
I'm sorry.
I
man.
know. I know it's supposed to be good. I just like I can't get through
Yeah.
it. I'm
So
just
instead, you went to Cyberpunk.
yeah. Well,
that good?
I needed like fast paced action to like keep me awake, and I was like, this looks like it could
Yeah.
entertain me, and it did. And it's really fast. It's really fast paced, and I've maybe watching it too much anime is ruining me. But like I like the 22-minute episodes. It like quickly gets you into the plot.
Yeah. That's what it is. Okay.
So yeah, the Cyberpunk is pretty good. I'm like 6 episodes in. It's already pretty good.
Nice.
And then I am watching. This is kind of biased plug. Chainsaw Man is like this is supposed to be like the big title for us.
Okay.
I'm not
is it a
sold
new
yet,
Funimation
but
thing?
it's a new Crunchyroll title.
Okay.
I mean, it's obviously produced by a company in Japan, and it's on Hulu too, but it's being released weekly, and it's supposed to be like huge. And I'll tell you, the numbers we're getting are insane.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. I mean,
Yeah,
you never
I
would
don't
have
know.
expected that, right?
no, there were people within the company that were telling me that it did, but I wasn't totally convinced until I saw.
And this is
some of the
a
numbers.
completely original series, not like a.
It's a manga. It's a manga, so there's a comic, but
Okay.
it's a completely original TV show.
Oh.
So yeah, it's
Okay.
interesting.
I
So
have to fire up my Crunchyroll account back.
yeah, did you have one before?
I did, yeah. I did. They probably have some of my information.
Probably. Yeah, I could probably look you up.
Yeah. All right.
All
I
right.
think that's going to wrap it for episode 24. Thanks for sticking around if you did.
That's right. All right.
Well,
Talk to you
back
guys
to you.
later.
Peace.